What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Graphic Novel Collector. Today, we have a really exciting episode for you. Another creator interview, podcast style. I'm going to be just asking some questions, and he's going to be answering it. It is going to be Aaron Walther, who is the creator of a new comic book coming out called HamletMania. It's going to be awesome. Hopefully you all enjoy it. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that other YouTuber stuff. But let's not waste any more time. Aaron, what's up?
Hey, Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show. It's pretty
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah. No. So you have a Kickstarter that has been started.
I do. Yeah, we just started last Wednesday, so it's not been quite a week.
Right on. Yeah. And for those watching on YouTube, we will have that link in the description so you can check it out if any of this sounds interesting, or you want to support a indie comic book creator. Check that link out in the description, and I'll get your socials from you and put your socials in the description and all that fun YouTuber things. Mm-hmm. But absolutely. So before we really delve into the book, if you want to kind of just, tell the folks who you are, how long you've been making comics, things like that, because you are no rookie here. You've been in the comic book making game.
Yeah, it feels kind of weird because I feel like I'm still everybody working in comics is either broken in or they're forever trying to break into comics. Like especially when you're in the indie scene, like there is a scene, but like nobody ever feels like they're really a part of it. So it can be kind of weird. I mean, making comics is such a isolating experience sometimes, but I started writing and self-publishing my own comics in 2009. I think was when my first work kind of got out there. I started on webcomics and eventually started moving into print, and I've just been working with a lot of artists since then. I've made several graphic novels, webcomics, and I've kickstarted several books as well.
Can you still hear me? Okay, there we go.
Yes. Whoa. Yeah. Looked like you were glitching out there for a second.
Yeah. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
All right. No, it's all right.
I'm still glitching.
Yeah. You're like Max Headroom going on.
Yeah, right. That's not good though.
No.
I actually hate this right now. It feels really weird.
I trust me. I know how that is.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Okay,
yeah,
I'm back.
Smoothed out. All
right. Wow. That was awkward. And what a great way to start this conversation. Holy smokes. We're cooking with grease lightning here. But so if you kind of want to talk about HamletMania, give a little bit of a synopsis and let the folks know kind of what's going on with this book.
Oh, sure. I think HamletMania is a pretty simple concept. It is what maybe you would call it a reinterpretation of Shakespeare's classic tragedy Hamlet, but instead of taking place in 16th century Danish court, it is taking place in the far future in an intergalactic wrestling ring. Yes. And so like
hence the mania.
Hence the mania, yeah. Hamlet and then mania. And it's really just like Shakespeare mixed with WWE. I almost said WWE. I mean, yeah. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Mixed with classic wrestling. That's pretty. It's the story of Hamlet. Like we didn't really, we're not trying to redo the story.
Sure. Really, no twist, no Shyamalan twists.
Yeah, no Shyamalan twist to it. But we're also not we're not holding ourselves to the original text exactly. Like it's not just Hamlet, but with different characters. It is
right.
It's like a new take on the story.
It's not like you one for one took the dialogue. And
right. Yeah. I think in a weird way, a weird inspiration for this was Disney's Lion King.
Okay.
Which is basically the story of Hamlet, but just kind of done as a Disney movie with, little cute animal characters and songs and stuff. But otherwise, it's like the major plot is Hamlet, and that's kind of how we're treating this. Like it's a wrestling drama, set to or Hamlet set to a wrestling drama, I guess you could say.
Yes, and I want to say, so full disclosure, I have read the first issue already. Aaron was gracious enough to send me some, some of the, I guess, digital copies of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love, if you watch wrestling and you love the, 90s, 80s to late 80s, early 90s, late 90s professional wrestling scene, there are so many deep cuts and so many, if you don't know it, it's going to go right over your head. But if you do know these references, you're going to be like, I know that. I get that. You're going to be like Leo pointing at the TV. Like,
yeah.
So I just want to say, that off the rip, like I loved all the little nuggets here and there.
Oh, nice. Well, that's good. I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you picked up on a lot of that.
Yes. Like the name of the announcer, I'm not going to spoil it, but the name of the announcer, I'm like, oh, I know what this is a reference to. So
yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. So the artist, I write the book, and the co-creator and artist is Greg McCrary. He's a good friend of mine, and he's just an incredible artist. But one of the things I love about his art, he kind of comes from an artistic background of doing caricature work, like people on the street that do caricatures of people, and that really shows in his design, his character designs for the book, because we kind of based a lot of the characters. I don't want to say it was like, this, like Hamlet is going to be this wrestler and Laertes is going to be this wrestler, but we did we were looking at a lot of classic wrestlers, because the 80s and the early 90s was really my period of wrestling when I was when I was paying attention to wrestling the most. So back then it was very, very colorful. Wrestling was very colorful. This is before it got into the Attitude Era, where everything was like hardcore and stuff. And Greg, actually, his interest in wrestling was during the Attitude Era, so we kind of tried to draw on both of those eras. Yeah,
absolutely. And kind of mesh them together a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but so his skills as an artist, as a caricature artist, worked really well for kind of taking like a template of a wrestler, or somebody tied to wrestling, and just reinventing their look in like a weird, distorted way to create an original looking character. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I especially loved this page right here when I was reading it. Just a big boom. That is a huge splash page. And
we had a lot of fun naming the moves too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking it, and not giving anything away, because you definitely should, if you're interested, check it out. And of course, back the Kickstarter. Speaking of backing the Kickstarter, sell somebody who might be kicking the tires on it. Why should they back the book?
Well, I think it's like the obvious reason is just if you like cool comics. I think HamletMania is definitely an underground type of comic book. It's not the type of comic that you're going to find from a mainstream publisher. And it's really the kind of thing that can only exist through like an indie self-publishing DIY space. And those are some of my favorite comics personally. Greg and I we bonded over our mutual love of Scud the Disposable Assassin by Rob Schrab, which was an indie
not
comic
familiar, but
oh man, you gotta check out Scud. There was a period where Scud was like the hottest thing. I think Scud eventually had a video game on not Dreamcast, maybe
Sega Genesis.
No, it was maybe Sega Saturn, I think.
Oh, okay.
One of those weird ones, the ones that I was too poor to ever own.
Yeah.
But no, like I mean, I'll spend the rest of the day talking about Scud. I love Scud.
No, that's not good.
I know. But Greg's art really reminded me of Rob Schrab's art, because it's really just loose, and it's not what you think of when you think of traditional comic book art, especially if you associate comic books with superhero art, which again, I love superhero comics. I could spend the whole rest of the day talking about superheroes. You know that, Alex.
Oh yeah.
But so yeah, this is definitely something that I think can only exist in this format. We have a lot of fun with the character designs. We have some really cool variant covers. You can kind of see that in there.
I was just about to say this. So this is, I believe, one of the variants, and
that's by Ben Perkins. He's the
so good. It's so good.
It's really good. I can't remember if I told you this, Alex. He's Ben Perkins is the artist on Deathslinger, which is yeah.
See, I knew I liked it.
Yeah.
Aside from just the the kind of Macho Man-esque iconography here.
Yeah.
I just see that's subconscious. And Deathslinger was a great book.
It was a cool book. Yeah, I liked it a lot. But yeah. So it's definitely it's like I said, it's the kind of thing that can only exist, I think, through self-publishing and through support of people that just like unique things that you're just not going to find anywhere else. I think this is the type of I love comics as a medium, and I think a lot of the best comics only work as comic books. And HamletMania is definitely something that I feel you could not necessarily turn into a TV show or a movie. It really only can exist as a comic book. I know we're doing amazing things with animation and CGI now these days, but even that, just there's still limitations on what you can do there. And Greg's art is just so wild that I don't think it can exist in any other format.
Unless he did it like, panel by panel.
Right.
But no, it's definitely very, very bombastic and very, it's out there. But I don't know, like some of these panels, and obviously there's, 18 other pages that, they're not going to get to see in this unless they get it and back it. But it's awesome. And again, the covers are incredible.
Yeah, we had a lot of great artists. So that's not a cover. That's an example of a sketch cover that you can get through the campaign. Like Greg will do, like we're going to print blank covers, like blank covers. And you can get the blank cover if you want, or for a little bit more, you can get a character sketch on it. And so that's just an example that I mocked up of Greg did that's a ghostwriter. Yeah. The I forget which one that is, it the third or the fourth one. The one with the car.
I forget. That was I remember.
I can't remember. I'm really embarrassed. I can't remember his name because
Reyes, maybe
Reyes. That sounds right.
Robbie Reyes, I think.
Yeah. He was. I do know this. The names are all escaping me because I can't think of a Felipe Smith. That's the creator who did that. Okay. And Felipe did. I'm gonna go off on a total tangent here.
Felipe. Okay.
Felipe wrote. He went to Japan and made manga in Japan, and he did a manga series called is it Pipochu? That's it. And I highly recommend you check that out if you like weird manga. It's just 3 volumes, and it's the story of a weird otaku from South Side Chicago that goes to Japan and goes on a crazy adventure and just gets culture shock because Japan is not what he thought it was. But also it's still an anime manga, so it's still crazy and wild. But anyway, Felipe Smith, he did that Ghost Rider at Marvel. He's a creator that I really like, actually. So there's a little bit of useless information for you.
This one's awesome too because this is the stadium that the match is in.
Yeah, the Omnidome,
which is an amazing. I assume that's an excellent old school pro wrestling callback.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's so many just if you pick up on them, you're gonna love it even more. But absolutely. So how did you come up with the idea to take pro wrestling and Shakespeare and meld them together?
I mean, it kind of just, I feel like it's not an original a joke, like an original idea, like I remember wrestling. See, I'm like, don't want to show my age too much here, but like I remember when everybody thought wrestling was real, for lack of a better
it's real to me.
Yeah, it's still real to me, damn it. Like I remember when that was like a big thing, and now everybody it's kind of come into its own. The cat's out of and it has been for 30 years almost,
Well, listen, when I was 8 years old in 1998, don't do any math to date me, but I thought it was real. I mean, but I was a kid, so
yeah. And there is a certain amount of magic. I think that is the magic of pro wrestling. It's through the eyes of a kid where like you believe it, and you get really sucked into it. And but there's just obviously a sense of theater to pro wrestling, like really good.
Absolutely.
Really, exactly. No, exactly. Like it's obvious now, like that's the whole kayfabe terminology and all of that. And so that's the main appeal, I think, to a lot of adults that are into wrestling, is that they legitimately really like the theatrics of it. And they really appreciate it on the same level that, shall we say, other people that are into higher forms of art appreciate theater,
movies and things of this.
And even live theater, like the Shakespeare play, And so really kind of what it came down to, I don't want to out myself as a poser, but I've never been I've never really studied Shakespeare that much other than just like entry level stuff in high school.
Yeah.
And I've also never really been into wrestling past the age of like 10,
That's okay. I mean, you know,
I have friends who are lifelong hardcore wrestling fans.
I've got the WWE Championship right here.
Right.
Some action figures here too. So
I've always been just exposed to it, in different ways. And I think I was watching. There's an episode of South Park, if you remember, where the kids start like a backyard wrestling ring.
Absolutely remember that.
And they made a lot of good jokes just about how their wrestling group was like a theater troupe, and they were all like writing their character story.
Well, and then like the better wrestler was not the one who had the best like technical grapples.
Exactly, that was the whole thing.
The best wrestler was the one who could talk the best.
Yes, who could act the best.
Who could act the best, which is like kind of true.
It is true. I mean,
like if you
have to have a stage presence.
Yes, if you think about like the best pro wrestlers ever, from when I was like a kid, you had The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Those were like the two top dogs.
Yeah.
Undertaker, of course. And so like were they in the ring like the most technical? No. I mean, The Rock's finishing move pretty much makes it to where his opponent has to lay down on the ground for like a full minute before he can do the people's elbow.
Yeah.
So, but no, I mean,
but they're charismatic and
they're charismatic.
They have that certain and just like appeal, and people get drawn to that and they get sucked into that. And so, I was watching that South Park episode and I don't know, just the idea hit me of like, wouldn't it be funny if a bunch of wrestlers just acted out Hamlet? And at that time I was thinking like let's just like rent out a local gym, and just like get a bunch of wrestlers and just do Hamlet, but in the ring, like a experimental theater kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But then the more I was thinking about it, the more fun it would be to do it as like a comic book. And
probably a lot more cost effective too.
Well, there's that. Yeah. Like
don't have to hire all these like actual indie professional
exactly. It's easier to bring to life as a comic book. But then also in doing that, then we were able to kind of just open it up beyond just like a bunch of wrestlers acting out Hamlet. I'm like, why don't we just like go full on,
it is actually
crazy indie comic style and like a lot of Greg's influences are manga influences. Sure. He loves Dragon Ball and stuff like that. Like you said, Scud the Disposable Assassin, Samurai Jack, kind of like.
Oh my gosh! Speaking of cinema,
yeah, exactly. But just like settings that are really open ended, where just kind of anything goes. You can have robots, you can have like a cowboy alien, you can have a ninja dog. Like you can just do anything. And
Absolutely.
that's kind of the setting that we wanted, so that he could just cut loose with his character designs, and we could just have fun, just making all these wild visuals.
When you initially told me about this book, you said it was obviously Shakespeare plus Dragon Ball Z. So I was thinking more like, these tournament style big, and obviously there are crazy fights in this book, but I was thinking more like, my mind went more Dragon Ball Z, like where they would be like, yeah, I'm doing like energy attacks and things like that. But then you're like, well, there's pro wrestling too. And then I was like, this is gonna be something that I think I would like, right up my alley. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's like, I might accept that it's like a niche appeal, a niche appeal to a lot of people, but I think that like the right person, this is going to be their favorite thing in the world. You know what I mean? I feel like it has that potential.
And one thing, and I know wrestling fans, and one thing that they will rally behind is wrestling stuff. So
right.
No, it's it's awesome. It's awesome. So how did you, you talk about your artists and everything. How did you find your artist?
Greg and I actually met at a comic book convention here in St. Louis. Yeah, there was. I honestly, I get this question a lot when I do conventions, especially because I'm primarily a writer, and so a lot of people really love comics, and but you just have no idea where to even start to make a comic book. And so if you see somebody like me that's at a comic book convention who has comic books, and you're just like, where do you even begin to like have a printed book?
Yeah.
And honestly, the best place to kind of get that information is comic book conventions. And that's the best place to meet artists, because, it's full of artists. And yeah, Greg and I were at, there was, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Small Press Expo, I believe. And this was probably back in 2014, I think. It was their first year. And Greg and I were both tabled across the aisle from each other. And so I was there with some of my early books, and Greg was there with his book. And like the whole day, I'm just like staring at the table right across from me. And I just see his banner and like his art. And I just like, I was hypnotized by it. Just like looking at it. He had a comic called Laser Dog, which is, that one is, it's definitely a little bit more of the actual, I don't want to say actual, but more of the, like what you think of Dragon Ball Z, where it's like this tiny little dog that can shoot lasers out of his eyes, and he just flies around the galaxy while bounty hunters chase him and he beats them up.
That's awesome.
It is great. I love it. And I'm just like, I was staring at it like all day. And we went out to dinner afterwards with like a mutual group of friends, and we were kind of all just like eating and hanging out. And it's like, it's weird to talk about like making friends as an adult, because most of your friends like you make as a kid, because you're just like forced into
situations.
Me about
it.
But like, so it's like, it's difficult to talk about this without it also sounding like we were on a date. But like we were just we were just hanging out and chatting, and we just hit it off, and we decided that we
exchanged numbers
and but that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then we just started talking about making a comic together, and HamletMania is the product of that.
Wow. So from 24, so when did you, follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
When did you guys decide, okay, we want to make a book together? Because this is also like, just full clarity for this episode or podcast or whatever you want to call this. For indie creators that could potentially be watching this, just trying to get into the business. How long did it take you to decide, okay, obviously we're buddies, but now we want to work together, from the point that you said, let's make a book, to conceiving the idea, to now we're off the ground and we have a Kickstarter. So
right.
Me through that, like,
so
time frame. And
making comics can be a long and arduous process. And everybody has like a different story of like how their book kind of came to be. HamletMania is something that we actually started in 2017. And a lot of books. Yeah, I know it to me.
Well,
it
the
still
pandemic
feels,
and everything.
I was about to say 2020 happened, and that just like that just like was a black hole for time. You know,
dude,
like we
I
just
can't believe
lost,
it's
like,
about to be 5 years ago.
I know.
Which is like, I'm so old.
So yeah, we started in 2017, I believe. Maybe 2016, actually, now that I think about it. But so we had been talking, we've been chatting about just like coming up with ideas, and he asked me to pitch him a few things, and I sent him like 3 different ideas, and the wrestling one was the one he liked the most because he liked wrestling.
Sure. See,
And
that's what I'm saying right there. That point proven.
Yes, exactly.
Like wrestling fans like anything associated with wrestling.
Right. And I think 2017. So basically, we had been talking about it, and I'd been working on a script, and then I think this was the year. It was pretty early when the Webtoons website launched.
Yeah.
And I had been hearing about Webtoons, like, oh, this is the new place to have your webcomics. And I won't go off on another tangent, but I'm not totally sold.
I was about to say, have you tried Webtoons or just like digital?
HamletMania first started on Webtoons.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
I'm not totally sold on the endless scrolling format. I see the appeal, especially in the age of phones.
Yes.
But it's just not like stylistically the way I think of. I'm very old school, and it's just not. I don't like
the page turns, man.
I appreciate the page turns. I appreciate the structure of like, art on a page. I like physically having things. As you can see in my background, I like physically having things.
Yeah. I think that comes from being about, our age, and I think that might be, unfortunately, a dying breed.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yes,
but
we could.
Anyway,
we need to chop this up into like 6 hour, 6 hours, 1 hour long conversation.
Yeah, a series.
Yes.
But so Greg and I, we were working on this book, and I was writing the script for him, and he was kind of doing character designs. And then there was an announcement. Webtoons was doing like a big. I don't remember if it was like a contest. They were doing something. I think it was probably like a contest of like put your comic on Webtoons and for like this month, and you have to do a new episode. They do it episodes, like do a new episode every week, and there were stipulations on how long episodes had to be. And
so even that terminology like irks me. It's an issue.
I agree. Yeah. And the way we looked at it was each episode was basically an issue's worth of content of what we wanted to make.
Sure.
And so he was like really like I was really skeptical, not just because of my own personal reservations for the website Webtoons, but like that's a huge work commitment to do. We were talking about doing like the equivalent of a full issue of a comic book a week, like every week. For a whole month, like every week. That's insane.
That's actually insane.
I know. And so I mean, to cut to the chase, we did it, and we banged out 4 episodes, and it was like literally nonstop work for me and him. Like he was just drawing, like not always drawing. And I was lettering and then compiling the images into the scrolling format. So the advantage to the Webtoons format was that we didn't have to like be limited to the page format of like how we wanted the story to flow. Yeah. So I would just give him a list of like 30 panels, and I'm like, just draw the panels however you want, and then I'll just arrange them to scroll, and then I would letter them. And it was like literally a month of. I would like wake up in the morning and I would letter some panels and work on the lettering. And then I'd go to work at my day job. Yep. And then at night I would sit there and just letter until like midnight. And then I would go to bed and I'd wake up and I'd letter and then go to, it was insane. But like,
how long did that last? Like, how long were you doing that process?
We did that for like 4 weeks, like just for the limits of the, it was a full month of that. And it was just for the stipulation for the contest. Like you just had to do that. And then, we took a break and then waited to see if like
what the reception was,
what the reception of it was. And it was the reception on Webtoons was kind of what I expected it to be, which was very, very small. But we got a few like really passionate responses to it. And because like Webtoons definitely has an audience that skews more toward like Korean drama comics, It's definitely a bigger female reader base. My wife and I we bonded over our love of comic books, and she reads almost exclusively stuff on Webtoons, whereas I read like 40-year-old Marvel comics, so it definitely like it's a readership. Like our book, I felt like our book, the readership was not at that website for our book. I think we could have maybe kept it going and built an audience, but as I said, I was already kind of not totally sold on the endless scrolling format.
Yeah.
And Greg definitely couldn't keep up that.
I mean, that's insane.
Workload.
For both of you, really.
The fact that we even did it is kind of crazy. But what that means is, so we did that for just like a month, and then we were sitting on it, and we were trying to figure out like what to do. Like what are we going to do?
Next play is,
what the next play is. And then Greg moved to San Francisco, and so we still kept in touch, and we were constantly like for years, literal years. I think 2020 maybe was the first year where we were just like, well, I guess we're not planning anything this year, because of all that mysterious stuff that happened that year that we don't talk about.
Yeah.
But like we were constantly just like, okay, maybe we should do a Kickstarter. Maybe we should. I pushed really hard to reformat the book into single issues. Like I don't think Greg is wrong to view the digital landscape as kind of like where you go to really get readers. I think he's correct on that, which is why I'm trying to find a way to marry the two. Like I like physical books, and I also feel like if you just have it for free on the internet, unless you build that giant passionate fan base, you're not gonna like there's not as much value in it, and I feel like what we're doing definitely appeals to a very specific fan base, and we would not be able to just keep making the book for free for years.
We
both have jobs,
although wrestling fans love wrestling things. You also have to have wrestling fans that also are predisposed to reading comic books.
Right. And there is I think
I am like your exact target market, by the way.
You actually are. I know. That's why I was really excited to do this interview with you.
Yeah.
No, I think there's a big crossover between wrestling and comic books just in general.
I would assume so, because
the
pageantry of
exactly
wrestling.
and I think a lot of, and maybe it is more of just like a generational thing, but like my generation, like what kids did was watched wrestling, played sports, or read comic books, and a lot of them did all three. You know what I mean? Like that's what and played video games. I'm sorry, I don't want to. Like we all had Nintendo.
Yep.
But now
I was a Sega kid, but
Sega,
Sega Genesis.
Sega Genesis was cooler. I'm not denying that, but I think the games were better on the Super Nintendo.
Oh, not yeah, absolutely. Can't disagree. Disagree. Anytime I'd always want to go over to my cousin's house because he was Nintendo through and through, and like, man, we got Mario. When he got Mario 64, it was a wrap. Like,
yeah.
My Sega Genesis didn't see any light whenever had to dust it off whenever I got home for the weekend and stuff.
Right.
So. Oh man.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think there's a lot of crossover between comics and wrestling.
For sure. So speaking of the Kickstarter and trying to gain funding for it, what is your plan with the money once it gets kick-started?
Sure. It's actually pretty straightforward. We're running a relatively small campaign. The money that we're asking for, I think it's $2,200. Yep. And that it's an odd number, but that $200 is basically the taxes and fees that Kickstarter and credit card companies take from us.
Yeah.
You know, that's like, because they take 10%. So
Sure.
like if I asked for 2,000, I'd
It'd
get
be
1,800.
yeah.
You know, so it's like I just kind of rounded it off to, you know, 220, or you know what I mean.
Yep.
But yeah, so we've estimated. I would like to print. So one of the things I'm trying to do with HamletMania that I haven't done in my previous comic book experiences, I've always done print on demand, which is if I just to give a brief explanation of the difference between print on demand and
I'm
offset
intrigued
printing.
by this.
So, I mean, to put it really simply, you can get things printed in small print runs for like a small amount. Like you can get 25 copies of a book printed at a printer here in the United States, and it's a digital printer. So they'll just like they just print it all, like the image digitally, and you can get pretty much any number that you want. But
it's going to be more expensive though if you do less.
Exactly. The less you print, the more expensive it is. So like printing at that scale, like if you print like 100 copies of your book, like a 22-page full color book will cost you close to $3 an issue just to print it.
Wow.
Which
that's insane.
Yeah, right. That's like,
and then if you think about like sending it to retailers, they gotta make some money off of it.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day, what are you making? Like $1 an issue, maybe $1.50,
if that. You know,
yeah.
I mean, like most retailers are going to take half of your listed price. So if you're trying to be competitive with the Marvel and DC comic book and price your book at like $4 or $5,
yeah,
I priced mine at $6 now because of that. I moved up $1. I used to try to keep it at $4 or $5, but you know, if it's costing me $3 to print the issue, and then a retailer is going to take half of that, so they're taking the $3 of profit, and all I'm making is the money that I spent. If I sell it for $6, they're going to take $3, and the $3 I make is the money that I spent on printing. And that's a fair trade to have your book just out there. I think,
sure.
Like a wholesale price is like standard in the comic book industry is like 50% roundabout. But you can do if you
basically. Sorry to interrupt, but like basically you're breaking even to get your name out there, get the book into people's hands so that they can read it, and then it builds your potential fan base.
Correct. Yeah, that's the way you have to look at it, because you're not going to make money off of it. But if you print in larger numbers, you can do offset printing, where you can get printers overseas, like in China, where they print for really cheap, but you have to order like in batches of like 500 or 1,000. But you print at that level, and it's going to cost you like $1 an issue, maybe less.
Now you might be making a little bit of money if you sell them all.
Even with the shipping, like shipping it over to China, like if it costs me $1 an issue, I mean, we're really getting into the weeds of the financials of this, but
it's interesting to me, and I don't know how many. It's kind of, this is very serendipitous because you know, talking about wrestling, not many people that watch wrestling have ever been in a wrestling ring, and I feel most people who read comics have never written a comic book and have done the business side of comics.
Oh, sure.
So this is very interesting to me.
So basically, you can print in larger numbers, and it's a lot cheaper, and you kind of eventually reach this breaking point. Now, this is the reason why a lot of people will do Kickstarters, because they need that like $1,000 up front, so that you can get 1,000 copies of your book, and you can sell it and actually kind of make a profit on it.
Yeah.
Now the catch is, if you order $1,000 of your book and it stinks, and you can only sell like 50 copies to your friends, now you're stuck with 900 copies of this book that you wasted a lot of money on. So it's reasonable to do small print runs when you're starting out, to just be like, I just want to get my stuff out there. And because you're talking about a difference of like, you know, you can spend $1,000 and get 1,000 comics that you aren't going to sell, or you can spend $200 and get
30 issues.
30 issues that you will sell, and you'll at least make your money back, and you're not losing money per se. So but you kind of reach this threshold where at a certain point, if you're printing like if you're going back to the print on demand over and over again to constantly do like another batch of 50 and another batch of 100, at a certain point you've spent $1,000 printing your like 250 issues of your comic that you've put out over the last, like reprinted over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
If you could have taken that $1,000 and just gotten your 1,000 comics and just had that for your print
right
run. So what that's what I'm trying to do with HamletMania is I would like to get a larger print run, because I feel like this is something that we're going to keep kind of I want to keep it in print for a long time. I've been doing conventions, like I said, for this is like my 13th year, I think, doing conventions.
Yeah.
And I've actually gotten to the point where a lot of the earliest stuff that I printed is now out of print, and I'm not necessarily eager to go like reprint it, because it's old books, and print on demand, like a trade paperback, it's going to cost me like $10 a book, $13 a book, like for a 150 page graphic novel. It costs you like $15 to print it, and that the price point starts to creep up on you, because you can't really charge like $30 for a graphic novel. Like people aren't
I would say like $20 is probably
20-25 is about
20-25. Sure. Yeah. But
it depends.
I'm just
on the
thinking
page
of
count,
like a smaller creator that, you're an indie creator. Maybe not everybody knows your name, where if I know I'm going and I see a book by, Tom King or somebody, I know that $25 is $25 well spent.
Exactly. The value.
Yes. Whereas if you're at a convention and you see $25-$30, you might get sticker shock and like, okay, well, I mean, this is a cool concept, but is this worth the investment?
Right.
So that's kind of where I was thinking. But
no, I agree. And that's the thing that I think a lot of creators have to keep in mind. Like there are some creators that I think get too caught up in just like the price of it. And you gotta, they'll like say, like Tom King's a good example. Like, well, Tom King, he gets paid this much to do.
You're not like,
he's Tom King,
Yeah, and you, like, not you, but the proverbial you are not Tom
right.
King.
But it's like your name has value, and people cash in on that. And so one of the things you need to do when you're starting out is to build that. I hate to say it like this, but you have to build that brand, and so you have to balance like you can't just like give your stuff away forever. Even though I basically just give my stuff away because I just want, I just am putting my stuff out there. I
mean, this is so weird how like comics and wrestling are so similar, because in wrestling they say you got to pay your dues. Exactly. It seems like very similarly, if you are creating comics in the beginning, no one cares who you are, because why would they?
Right.
So you have to pay your dues, and by pay your dues, I mean literally you got to basically make books for little to no money, and probably you're actually just paying to get your name out there at first.
Pretty much, yeah. There's an aspect that it's kind of a pay to play kind of a thing, which is really frustrating, because I don't think comic books need to be that way. But just depending on where you're at, like with what you're comfortable doing, like if you're a writer, like me, if you were starting out just like writing a book, I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, but the easiest and best way to do it is to just pay an artist to draw the book for you.
Yeah.
And that's how I did it. Like I've made a couple of comics as like with just like partnership deals, but for the most part, I always would pay an artist a page rate. And the good news about that is it makes you very popular with artists, because
they want to work with you because they know they're getting at least
they're getting paid. And that was we were talking about like how I hooked up with Greg, and that was one of the things when we were talking about making comics, and I just like mentioned that all of my books I like funded them personally and like paid a page rate, and he's like, not like, there's a way to spin this where he just saw dollar signs and was like, oh, hey, I can get paid from this guy. But I think more realistically, he saw it as like, this guy's serious, like he's committed to it, and he's not trying to like smooth talk somebody into giving him free art. And
and that's
there's plenty of those guys out there too.
Absolutely. I was gonna say that's like the scummy, back alley way to do it. Wow. So would you say that most of your books you would hire an artist
Yeah.
So when it comes to, say, one of your books takes off, how would that work?
Well,
I'm very interested in the business side of comics.
No, I got that. I mean, you work out different contractual deals with different artists, kind of depending on what the job is. But for the most part, I mean, I don't want to like give specific details.
No. I'm not asking deals, for that, but like just roundabout.
Like for the most part, what I do is I pay a page rate to an artist that is considered an advance on profits that we might make in the future.
Sure.
So if a book takes off and like we actually start making some money, right, I will deduct the page rate from like what they would have made, like splitting it 50-50. Sure. And then once that threshold is met, then everything is just split between
50-50.
50-50.
Cool. That seems fair. I mean,
I think it's pretty
comics
fair.
are a visual medium.
Well, yeah, it's not a comic book without an artist.
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm sorry, it's just not.
It's just a book.
Yeah, it's just a book, right? And I got nothing against books. I like books too. But
books are cool.
I love comics.
Comic books are way cooler though.
That's yeah. But yeah, I think that's the best. Like that's probably the best contract for both parties is to have something like that where even if it's not enough for an artist to live on, it's something to make it worth their time to kind of commit to it.
Oh yeah.
And that's how you can kind of look at it as just like a down payment on like future success.
Absolutely. Listen, I sold my first print ever of one of the just like random superheroes that I posted for Instagram. And one of my buddies was like, can I get a print of this? And at first I thought he was like ribbing me. To use a pro wrestling term. I thought he was joking with me. Yeah. He's like, no, I really actually want this. I'm going to put it in my office. Could you have this printed? And I was like, oh, like I didn't even know what to charge.
Right.
But so yeah, no, if somebody were to approach me and be like, hey, I'll pay you a page rate for this book, I'd be like, sure. Like, absolutely. Right. But no, that's awesome. I think that's the right way to do it. And by right, I mean, the straightforward, I'm not trying to swindle anyone.
Yeah. I think, I mean, that's kind of how I've always been. I'm a pretty straightforward person, and I think I wear my heart on my sleeve to a certain degree as well. So
same.
I definitely am like a what you see is what you get kind of a guy. And I think most of the people I work with get that. Yeah. And they appreciate that. And
no nonsense, no BS. Yeah. Let's just, this is what it is. Let's make either do it or not. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you were asking, I want to finish the, the answer to like the money for the Kickstarter. So, cause like it's a relatively small amount that I'm asking for. I need about 2,000, but it's still a large amount, I think, for like my reach as like my name. Cause like I have a lot of friends that really support like the books that I make, but I don't know if I'm like known pretty much beyond the area. And, it's easy to feel like when I'm in St. Louis area, and you are too, we are. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's easy to kind of feel disconnected from the rest of the community, cause like everything, like New York Comic-Con just happened there, and San Diego's on the other coast, and like Seattle, there is Chicago, but like, if you're not from the Midwest, I think a lot of people don't understand how big the Midwest is. I have a friend who lives in Canada, and he lives in like Niagara Falls, and he's complaining about having to drive to New York. He's like, it's like an hour. And I said something
dude, that's nothing.
I was like, he's like, I got to cross the border. And I'm like, whatever, you got a passport. It's like an hour drive. And I was like, the nearest thing to me other than St. Louis, like is Chicago. And that's like a 5-hour drive. And he did not believe me. No, he was just like, you live in Illinois. How can the biggest city in your state be 5 hours away from you? And he like had to look at a map, and he's like, wow. I mean, I'm not saying like foreigners are stupid or anything, but he is from Canada. And if you're I'm digging myself into a hole here. Yeah, I know. No, I'm just joking. I just think it's just a thing. Like a lot of people don't really understand how vast the Midwest is.
Oh yeah.
And so there is kind of a sense of isolation, a little bit, you know, when you're working in like especially a creative field, you know.
I feel that as someone who I always joke and say, I've never left my zip code.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously not true, but like, I don't know. It's if you're from the Midwest, like it's a different thing because we're flyover country. Other than Chicago,
right?
Which that's like a huge
its
metropolis.
Own thing. Yeah,
but it feels like a different state, to be honest.
It does. It is kind of.
Yeah. So no, I get that. I absolutely get that. But
yeah, basically the money. So like to finally answer the question that you asked me is I want to be able to print like a larger run than just like a print on demand. I don't want to just print 100 copies for like my friends. I want to like, this is something that I plan on keeping in print because it's actually, and this is probably a different topic, but it's kind of a long series that we're making.
Oh yeah, that was actually going to lead me into my next question.
But so that's good. But
you're teeing me up.
Yeah. So like I want to be able to keep this in print for a long time because we want to do many more issues. And so like the other money is basically just used to print the variant covers and cover shipping, and then just put directly into issue 2, which we would like to basically start as soon as we finish this one.
So that leads me perfectly, and I'm sure you did this a little bit on purpose, but how long do you how long is this series going to be in your mind? Like how long do you have
I can't give you an issue count because when we started this, like I said, we were doing it was formatted for Webtoons.
Yeah.
And what we did was we took everything that we did for the 4 episodes of Webtoons and we broke it down and reformatted it to be in issues, and that's going to be a 6-issue series just for Act 1. Hamlet, the original play, is a 5-act play.
Okay.
Now all the acts are not all the same length. Like some of them are a lot shorter than others. So, but my goal is to be able to do each act of Hamlet like as its own kind of mini series. Yeah. So this is going to be 6 issues for Act 1. It's going to be HamletMania Act 1, Issue 1, Act 1, Issue 2, and then we can collect it into like the trade paperback for Act 1, and then want to do Act 2 and Act 3, 4, and 5.
And it says here, right here, you know, Act 1, Issue 1, right here on the Kickstarter. And I assume this is the cover, cover.
Yeah, that's the A cover by Greg McCrary, which is such a cool cover. Like he really delivered on that one.
Yeah, it's very, I don't know how to describe it.
So one of the things,
it's definitely a vibe, though.
It's a vibe. One of the things that I love about Greg's art, and he doesn't necessarily take this as a compliment, but I think you can see it if you're looking at this cover here. I love Greg's art. It's so manic to a certain degree, and it has this quality to it. And again, this is why I kind of admit that this comic might be kind of a hard sell to people that like very straightforward art and not something that's a little more challenging, or, and I hesitate to say experimental, but just something that's not as clear cut as like your average Marvel book, for example, just to go to a simple example.
Yeah.
But I've equated Greg's art to the old Magic Eye books of like the 90s. I don't know if you remember those. That was like digital. Oh my God, I'm showing my age here too. This was like it was like a digital art thing that it would look like just a random pattern of just like colors and shapes. And then you would have to like relax your eyes and like cross your eyes and just stare at it. And then you would see like a 3D image kind of pop like into the perspective. And if you saw the movie Mallrats, that's my entry point to this.
Okay.
It plays a big part in Mallrats because there's a character that's staring at the magic eye for like the course of the whole movie, and he can't see it. And he's just like occasionally the characters, because the whole movie takes place in a mall.
Yeah.
And the main characters will just like walk by and they're like, oh, did you see it yet? And he's like, no, I'm still working on it. And he's just staring at this like thing. So I've always equated Greg's art to has a little bit of that like magic eye quality, where when you first look at it, it's like a lot of abstract shapes and you're not entirely sure what you're looking at. But like the more you stare at it and the more you study it, like a unique image really starts to form, and you can kind of like build the image in your head, really. And that's what I like about his art so much, because this is going to sound really, really pretentious, but like Greg's art, like the real version of his art actually exists somewhere between what's actually on the page and your eyeballs as a viewer. Like the real art is like the experience of you putting it together, which is, maybe not the best way to sell a comic book, but I've always just really liked that aspect of his art. Like it's really weird and bizarre. And it's a longer series. I think that's what we were talking about. It's going to be, we're going to keep working on it. We've got, like I said before, we have Act 1 completely finished. So we do have 6 issues worth of comics done. We just are going to
that makes sense. Yeah.
Format it and edit it into the single issue like page length. And I don't want to say it's like all originally just like repurposed art. Greg actually drew a lot of new stuff for this. So it's it's still like, you can go right now to Webtoons. I think HamletMania is still on there. And you would be able to find the original version of it. And I also re-lettered this. So like the lettering is a little bit different. And whenever I re-letter, I kind of tweak the script always, because I'm never happy with a script.
To be a writer, right? That's
right. It's just what it is. But so like we're going to like I said, we have 6 issues 95% finished. We're going to do the extra 5% to have 6 issues done. If nothing else, we're going to have a cool comic book that is a weird version of HamletMania Act 1. And if this takes off, I would like to be able to do Act 2 and 3 and do the whole series. And I think it would be a real epic comic.
It's definitely epic. Like
it's Hamlet. Like
you feel it from. I mean, look right here. This is. I believe this is literally the first panel of the book.
That's the first page. Yeah, it's page 1.
And you see how epic it is. I mean, this huge stadium. So. And then the ding, I love the ding. But no, that's awesome. So, alrighty. So, aside from just HamletMania, what, just in general, maybe who are some of your comic book influences? Maybe not even just comics, but just what are some of your influences?
Oh, man, I feel like I should always be prepared for this question, but like
it was on the sheet I sent you.
I know you sent me the sheet. I just have so many. I love so many comics, and it's I'm like kind of a scatterbrain when it comes to this. Like I love a lot of different kind of comics. Like the comics that got me into reading comics was Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Watterson, and I always cite that as the thing that just like really sparked that. I mean, it's the greatest. I think it's the greatest comic strip ever made. But it definitely is what like sparked my interest in the art form. And I think that probably informed a lot of my like my artistic style before I like even realized it. Because I always associated comics with Calvin and Hobbes. And then eventually I started reading comic books. I was also, as a kid, I was into G.I. Joe. And so I started reading G.I. Joe comics, and that was like wildly different from Calvin and Hobbes. Two totally different.
I could imagine,
right? And then of course, you get your superhero stuff, Spider-Man and the X-Men and Superman and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I always really liked your regular Marvel and DC books, but Calvin and Hobbes was always something that was just different to me. And then when I discovered indie comics and like underground stuff, that's where I saw stuff that was.
Yeah, I mean,
there was no limit to like the types of books you could make.
Indie comics are so incredibly vast. Like this right here, aside from your book, Atomic Nazi Smasher, this is all of my red DC, and then I've got 3 Marvel stuff. And then I've got all this entire side is all indie stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I've got one little cube for manga at the bottom. But yeah, no, indie stuff is where I definitely, that's where my heart lies. That's where I mean, yeah, indie stuff, but obviously, you know, Spider-Man.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's a
great. Superhero stuff's great, but
yeah,
there's indie stuff is, there's so many, like everybody who wants to have a voice and you want to write and be a writer, like you can make whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to, you know, I feel like Marvel and DC, especially on the bigger characters, there's only so many things you could do with a Batman or a Spider-Man.
Right, right.
If you're doing your own thing, you could literally have whatever story you want. So
yeah, that's what I'm enjoying about Kieran Gillen's Power Fantasy comic series. I think there's only 2 issues out. I don't remember if you read any.
I read the first one. I said
it's
too
very
much talky.
Yeah. I agree with your criticisms, but I can't help but be like suckered into it because it's basically the book that he was like, this is the X-Men book I would make if I could make. Yeah, because I could make it good. But like working at Marvel, because he was writing the Immortal X-Men, I think, and he was like, you know, when you're as a writer, when you're working on something, you're just constantly like generating ideas and like,
sure,
how could I make this work for this character, and how, you know, what would this character do in this situation? And when you're working for Marvel, there's all these limitations on like what you can do because it's,
well, yeah, you can't just like kill everybody or something.
Sure. And I mean, there's obvious limitations to just like, it wouldn't work for the story. Like it wouldn't work for the X-Men to do this. But then there's just like the very cynical, unpopular limitations of just like, we have to maintain the trademark. Like the character just has to always look like this, or the character has to always do this. And you know, this character is going to appear in this movie, so we need them out and about. And so, or even just like Marvel, we have to maintain a certain family-friendly atmosphere. Like you're not allowed to approach this subject, you know, things like that.
And don't talk to me about no red band nonsense, which I hate. If you've been watching the channel for a while, y'all know I hate that. Just release the book how the creators intended it, so I don't have to pay an extra buck to get one extra page and a little bit more blood.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you know, I feel the same way about that too. And so yeah, like Kieran Gillen, it was just straight up like, this is the book that I feel like I wanted to make, but these are all the ideas I had for the X-Men that I just couldn't do at Marvel. And so that's the kind of thing that like it, and I kind of agree with you. I wasn't like totally into the first 2 issues, but I'm just like, I'm there just to see like, all right, I'm going to give you a shot. What can you do with the with the subject? Because X-Men is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I love the X-Men, and that's you know, talking about influences, like Chris Claremont.
I was probably ask,
one of the biggest influences on me. Not specifically in writing style, although I only recently have started like studying his writing. Like as a kid, I just read a lot of his books because that's just what a comic book was.
Yeah, well, that's what you had. That's what you had. That's what was coming out at the time.
Right. Yeah. But I think a lot of when I was starting out, my writing style was more influenced by then more contemporary comic book writers like Alan Moore and Grant Morrison. And I hesitate to say Brian Michael Bendis because I've completely like, he did what he did at a very specific time, and he did it very well, but that time has passed. And I know, I don't want to like make any enemies from Bendis fans, but I've just like realized, well, part of it also is on a personal level. I just realized that I don't want to make comics like that. Yeah. And so, and that's part of, I think that's part of your creative journey is like, you kind of start out just like imitating like what you know. Sure. And then at a certain point, you do need to just
find your own voice and
make decisions. You have to make hard decisions of like, how do I actually want to do this? And one of the things that I've been doing recently is actually studying how Chris Claremont wrote his old comics, because I really like the presentation of older comics, the way they balanced like an ongoing story with a single issue that was like not a self-contained story, but felt worthwhile.
I still think you would like Ryan North's Fantastic Four.
I know.
I don't know how you don't like it because it is literally.
I know
every issue is self-contained.
It does all of the things I'm saying, and I acknowledged that. I just like we had this conversation.
Yeah,
We'll do a different. I'll get caught up on Fantastic Four, and we can do a different episode where we argue. We'll just argue about Ryan North's Fantastic Four for an hour. But yeah, no, so like, yeah, Chris Claremont is a big influence on me. Manga actually is a big influence. Like I went through a period where I wasn't reading comic books because I kind of grew out of them. Where I was like, I was like 14 years old, and I was like, Spider-Man, that's for babies.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go read Akira and Ghost in the Shell, and also Tenchi Muyo and Ranma 1/2, and all this like stuff that's not necessarily for adults, but like it's still pretty adolescent is what I'm getting at. But like but as it's part of the like as a kid, you're just discovering things. So I love a lot of manga, that older manga, and we tried to bring a lot of that to HamletMania. And
you can definitely see the influences from manga to it.
Yeah, especially with Greg's art, like it's just so energetic.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So Chris Claremont, definitely one of your big influences.
One of my, I will quickly say like two of my biggest influences as a writer that are not comic book writers is science fiction author Robert Heinlein. He's like one of the big three. He is Robert Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, and Arthur C. Clarke are like the big three of golden age sci-fi from like the 40s through the 60s. I love Robert Heinlein. He wrote Starship Troopers, which I do love the movie, but I hate that it's not it's a terrible adaptation of the book. I love the book and I love the movie as like two separate things.
Right. But and then you're reminded the title of the movie, and you're like it breaks your brain a little bit.
It bothers me so much because like that's another thing. I don't want to go off on that tangent. I could argue forever with people about Starship Troopers. But yeah, Robert Heinlein is one of my biggest influences. Like I just really
I'm doing my part.
Yeah, exactly. Would you like to know more? And then the other author that I've actually probably read the most, probably more works of his than anybody else, including comic books, is Terry Pratchett. I love his Discworld series. I've got the whole like 20 something books, I think. He was a brilliant writer. He had a really clever way of like his turn of phrase was really fun. This would made him a comedy writer, which is like I kind of like I hate to describe myself as a comedy writer because I feel like there's a weird balance between comics where there's like gag strips, which is what a lot of people think of as funny, and then there's stuff that's
like I think of like what you're describing just for the viewers is like what modern Deadpool is.
Yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, Deadpool's definitely a comedy character for sure.
But like, just I don't know. We've talked about modern Deadpool.
Yeah,
obviously not here, but like
you can go to my Patreon and read my 6-page comic that I wrote and drew, and it kind of sums up my feelings on Deadpool. And I don't remember if I showed you that or told you about it, but
I don't think so. But
I had a very unique experience at a comic book convention with a group of Deadpool cosplayers. Oh boy! And I recount the event in comic form, and I also just kind of give like a little history of Deadpool and how he went from like kind of like a laughingstock character to like the current like one of the most popular characters.
Money-making machine.
Money-making machine, exactly. Yes. And
just IP. That's all he is at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. And my interest in the character is like as the more popular he got, the less I was interested. And it's like there's like a middle point where I like really liked the character before he got like super popular, and then I just like he kept going up and I kept going down.
Yes.
But yeah, it all reached a breaking point at this comic book convention with these cosplayers because
you lost it. You lost it.
Well, I'm glad to say that I personally didn't do anything. It was just something that I witnessed. But it was a thing. It was a bizarre thing that happened, and I felt like it was a story that needed to be told. But yeah, you can read that for free on my
Check out the Patreon link in the description below.
In the description, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, maybe not. I don't know.
No,
I'll have to read it. It's
a funny story. I think it's funny.
Right on. Well, so last question here before we wrap things up. looking to the future, what are your future plans after this Kickstarter gets kicked and started? What are your future plans past HamletMania?
Well, that's like
anything
it's
on the back burner, or
too many things on the back burner. I mean, like, yeah, I've been working on HamletMania since 2017.
Right.
Around to it. Like, the story of my life is like comics that are in like one form of stage of creation. I think the stuff that's going to happen immediately is the thing I'm going to work. We're going to keep working on more HamletMania, so we're going to at least finish Act 1 in its entirety. Sure. I'm going to keep making. I think the thing I've been focused on the most is the comic book series that I write and draw called Autographical.
Yep.
And that's what the Deadpool comic I just told you about. It appears in Autographical. And that's just like autobio stories about my life, my years in a go nowhere, do nothing band, and like years as a comic book creator going to conventions, and also just like random stories that I think are funny and interesting. So I've been working on that for the last couple of years, and my wife, who is a much better artist than me, but she's
good. I saw some pictures you posted. Yeah,
she's really good.
She's good. Yeah.
And so she's finally she's helping me out with Autographical, where she's inked some pages. Like, I'm drawing them, I'm penciling them, and she's inking them. And really, when I say inking, she's
redrawing
them. Yeah, exactly. And they look great. So we're working on that. And then I think my next, I hate to say big project, because this is my problem, is that I shouldn't have big projects.
All big projects.
I should have little projects. But I've been working on a book since 2014, writing and drawing, called The Original Lady Killers, the semi-fictional autobiography of Preston Rocket. And that is
quite the title.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool title. That is like a kind of a not a spin-off, but like a sister book to my Autographical series, where it is most like it's an autobiography of stuff that happened in my life from like ages like 18 to 28ish, about a 10-year span in my life, but fictionalized. So it's like, all the names have changed and kind of set into more of a narrative. But that one is basically just the story of a band. Spoiler alert, I was in a band once. And just exploring like the nature of romantic relationships and creative relationships, and how they're kind of similar. Like I said earlier about meeting Greg, and how it's sort of like talking about it feels like I'm talking about a date. I think there's a lot of crossover of those types of feelings when you're in a creative relationship with somebody. Like, you do get kind of really close. And so that's kind of like I've got a story to tell there about a group of dudes who get really close and they're in a band, and just kind of what happens with that as that kind of grows and struggles, and also how romantic relationships get involved in that as well. So that's probably my next like main focus, because that's something that I'll be able to write and draw with my wife, and it's something that I want to be able to, because I have that Patreon, and right now the thing I'm posting the most on Patreon is my very first comic book series called Zero's Heroes, which was a web comic back in 2009, and that ran for a long time. So I've got like 300 pages of that comic book series that I'm just putting that up for free on my Patreon. Like, I just need to have somewhere to put it, because the website's no longer around. And so I'm putting that up there for free, but I want to have more content, like more newer stuff. So I probably will be working on that, the Original Lady Killers, more autographical. And there is talk of maybe doing another Amoral Stingray, which was the book that I kickstarted last year. And that's probably one of my personal favorite books that I've written.
This isn't about Amoral Stingray, but if you want to check out, it's all on your Patreon, or... Or also my website, secondthoughtcomics.com. So if you send me all those links, I will make sure they all get in there.
But we'll do.
I believe, the first 4 issues, and I think I've read the first 3, but it's like a throwback to the Stan Lee Ditko era kind of Spider-Man. And I really
very much so.
like, even if I did not know you and I happened to come across this book and pick it up, I would really enjoy it. So I gotta,
well, thank you. That's very, very nice of you to say. But yeah, that's exactly what we were going for.
It is a good comic book, and your writing style specifically in that book, it reminds me of Stan Lee, where you talk directly to the reader as the narrator,
as like a disembodied narrator.
Yes.
And that's something that, I mean, like talking about the difference between like older comics and new comics, which is something that we sometimes talk about. Like, I feel like you
don't see it much anymore.
Like that, you don't like that type of third person narration. Like most comics these days, like everybody wants to be Frank Miller and have their like internal monologue caption boxes. And I'm not saying that's bad. I love crime film noir stuff, and that's what Frank Miller was doing. But it's just like, it gets so tedious when that's like what every comic is doing. And I feel like there was something special about those older comics where you just had the narrator who was basically a character in his own right. And in Stan's case, it was Stan. But if you go back and read other books from that era, like I read a lot of Silver Age comics, and he wasn't the only one doing that. Like pretty much that was the standard for how books were written. Stan just had a certain amount of flair and panache to how he did it. He really just cranked everything up to 11. And so I took that and I was like, well, let's see if I can crank it up to 12
again. How comics and pro wrestling are similar. You take your personality and you crank it to 11 or maybe 12 in your case.
Like, what's the limit on this crank? Like, I'm looking for it.
This one goes to 13.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. If you watched it, if you made it this far,
I know.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Of course, if any of this sounds interesting, if you want to check out HamletMania, the links will be down in the description below, and I'll be sure to pin a comment with the link to the Kickstarter and then all of Aaron's other stuff like his Patreon and your website. I will have that in the description as well. Do you have any parting words of wisdom, or where can people find you on the internet or anything like that?
That's a good question. I'm on Facebook. I'm Aaron Walther on Facebook. I'm the one that talks about comic books. I'm sure there's probably other Aaron Walthers, but probably none of them talk about as many comics as I do.
Confirm that.
I do have an Instagram for Second Thought Comics. My wife set it up for me, and I think it might just be at Second Thought Comics. I think it is for that.
If you send me those links, I'll be sure to get them down in the description too.
Otherwise, I'm not really like that. Like I said, like Patreon and Facebook are kind of the only places that I really post.
No Twitter, no.
I mean, I think I do still have a Twitter account that
it's kind of a hellscape now.
It's
not great.
I never liked Twitter, like in pretty much its entire existence. There was just always something that bothered me.
But now you have a reason to actively dislike it.
I know, but like it's like always something different. And so like now I'm like, oh, things are changing on Twitter. Maybe I'll check it out. And I'm like, no, this is bad for different reasons.
Dumpster fire now.
Yeah, it's just awful. So yeah, I don't really matter. Plus I'm as we've established earlier in this interview, I'm old. And so I already don't really I kind of resent having to be on social media. But I can't deny the utility of it. And I do like seeing all the cat pictures that show up in my feed.
Me and my daughter watched like 30 minutes of cat shorts the other day. Cracking up. Like, cats are great.
They're funny. They're stupid and funny.
Yes.
But Facebook, Patreon, Instagram. Those would probably be the big ones.
Right on. Well, thank you all so much again. If you made it this far, you're the real MVPs. We both appreciate you for watching this long. Keep reading comics, keep reading graphic novels. For Aaron, I'm Alex. And until the next video, I'll catch y'all on the Flippy Flap. Adios.